I'm going to stop when I want to stop, not when you want to stop.
On this episode of Bound to Talk, Malicious Melissa interviews Sam, an expert on electrical play. They also discussed the difference between swingers and the BDSM community, as well as the pre-internet era of kink.
Hi, I'm Malicious Melissa and my co-host
Adam.
and our special guest Sam. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. So Sam, how did you get into the BDSM lifestyle?
I think it got into me.
Oh, that's a great answer. Do tell.
Well, it's one of those things that, I remember as a kid, wrestling with a neighbor girl. And, it was really fun. And, we didn't know what we were doing.
How old were you?
Like 10,
Okay.
8, I would say started at maybe
so
age
pre-pubescent.
8, 9, 10 years old. And I had a go-kart and we had a seatbelt, and it was really fun to, because you have to make sure she doesn't fall out of the go-kart. So we made this improvised seatbelt. So that was like instant fun, bondage like that.
Oh, that's
something simple as
Okay.
that. Yeah.
So what did you like the feeling? Or
Yeah.
Did you like binding her, or how did it
Both,
go?
both.
Okay.
At that time, and she liked to wrestle, and I liked to wrestle. So it was one of those kind of things that's like, where did that come from? It was inside you.
But you just kind of felt it.
Yeah,
and
I
then
did.
What did it spin into?
As time progressed on, back before the internet. Now, keep in mind, this is going way back, and so back then, it was hard to make connections. You had to go to some sleazy adult bookstore, and you had to buy a magazine. You tried to find one that was up to date enough that you could find a date. A lot of them don't have dates on them. So what you had to try to do is find one that was kind of recent enough, and then you'd look in the personals and you'd send somebody snail mail. Can you imagine that? So it was a lot harder without the internet to make that kind of thing happen.
And what would some of the ads look like?
Well, it would look dominant looking for submissives, or submissives looking for dominants, and back then, again, you had a limited pool to work with, and so I looked at these magazines, and I sent a couple I sent a couple letters out to somebody out in Los Angeles. You want me to say the name?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Stephanie Locke. She was a German dominant from Germany, and she was in the Los Angeles area. And
was she pro?
She was.
Okay.
She was. And it was, like I said, it was really hard to find any kind of submissives, even though I knew that I was a dominant, but I also had a switch side to me there. So back then, there wasn't much choice, so you had to go with what you could get.
But you weren't living out there, so
no,
she was really far.
I was teaching. I was teaching out there.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So my job...
So she was local for you at the moment.
She was local L.A., and, since I was teaching in L.A., that was a good place for me to, look. And the pool was a lot bigger there than it was, in this area.
Okay. So a bigger community?
Yes, much bigger
so
community.
You had, like, many more choices for people to play with?
Yep. And the other thing is there was a bunch of commercial dungeons that were fun to go to. And now, let me tell you about another organization that came along about the same time. When I was looking through those magazines, I came across a magazine called Stand Corrected.
I've never heard of it.
And it's an amazing group of people they were originally located in Studio City, California. And since then, they've moved to Las Vegas. But they had a magazine, and they were shooting videos. And they had play parties.
What kind of videos? Fetish porn?
Spanking.
Okay.
They were
so just BDSM.
they were more of a plain. There was a mix of that stuff there, but this was mostly a spanking community, and boy, there was a lot of them. And spankos is what we called them.
Spankos.
And
that's cute.
The play parties were really fun. We everybody would go out to Studio City and this is not far from Hollywood, and you'd, make a reservation for the whole weekend, and there was a bunch of people running around. And interestingly enough, one of the nights that we were there first night, they had an earthquake the night before. A whole bunch of people were displaced, and they were in the hotel. We had the conference room, one of the big conference rooms, and they made an announcement, because people were walking around carrying paddles and stuff, and these people from Los Angeles that are displaced from their homes are, with their families and their kids running around, and you've got a bunch of weirdos running around with paddles and the girls wearing very short skirts, and what you'd find at a conference like
Sure.
that. So we kind of were policed in by ourselves, but then we did see the police, and when they came, they were just shaking their heads. Nobody was doing anything wrong,
no
but it was like, can't you guys be a little more appropriate? Maybe a little more sensitive to the people that are here that they're not in their house, they're in a hotel, and there's a bunch of weirdos here.
What year was that?
Oh, geez, that's going to be about, I'm going to say, probably about 1990.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think now it's not as strict.
No.
We went to Exotica, and then we went to the neighboring hotels, and you see family and kids, and then the porn stars eating with people, and everybody dressed, provocatively, and like you can tell who's here for that and who's there for that, and everybody's just kind of mixed together.
But when you're walking down the hall and you're with your group of your peers, and you're going to dinner or something like that, and then some 13-year-old kid walks along and his eyes are falling out of his head. It's like he turns around and wants, no, I want to go that way. Where are they going? What are they doing? So it was pretty.
Very cool.
And those parties was a good place for you, since the internet didn't exist yet, was to make friends and to become part of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And people would bring and you'd run into the same people, and you become, you ended up with this nice group of friends, and you'd call them and talk to them, and you'd make reservations, and you'd try to get your rooms in the the same general area of the hotel, so that you could visit around. And it was just kind of funny. You'd have a party in this room for a little while, and then you'd move somewhere else, and somebody else would have something. And then they moved to Palm Springs, California, and an old hotel, the Riviera Hotel, which was a lot of the movies were done at this hotel. So it's a vintage, like 1955 era hotel that was
That's really nice.
a big place, and it was round, real big round thing. So you walk around it, and it attracted a lot of people, from a lot of Hollywood people. And I ran into somebody one day, and I'm not going to say who she was, but I was listening to her voice, and it was so, we're eating, we're at a buffet line.
A celebrity?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was talking to her, and all of a sudden, and she's going like, shh, don't say anything.
Okay.
And because I knew who it was at that point, and she says, no, I'm not really here. I'm here, but I'm not here. And
Well, was she in the lifestyle?
I'm pretty sure she was.
Okay,
she wasn't at the party that I was
likely,
at.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's the kind of thing that, there's a lot of Hollywood people, obviously they're told not to mix too much, and, so that people know that they're in the lifestyle. But there's a lot of people that are in, that are actors and stuff in Hollywood that are part of this. And we've seen them. And, I've played with them in Chicago with some of the Leather Rose, the original Leather Rose.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, Mistress Italia was telling us about that when she was on, how she has celebrities, and some of them she doesn't even recognize, but then her other workers are like, oh, do you know who that was? And then she sees them drive away in a Bentley, but she's signing, non-disclosure agreements and keeping everything very private, even what they do, because it might be catered for them, and they're going to know that she's talking about them, even if she doesn't use their name.
That's right. And you have to respect people that don't want others to know. It's something
absolutely.
that when we're playing in our backyard, we don't care what we're doing. But then it's soon, especially with the internet and the privacy stuff, that it's so easy to get caught up and end up in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to avoid that, when we can. And if somebody says, "Hey, like, the star that I was talking to, she didn't, she has such a distinct voice. You would know her in a second. And, I'm listening to her and I'm talking, just like, when you're standing next to somebody doing something, we had this casual conversation and it's like, and oh, by the way, she did have a mask on.
Oh, really?
So.
Oh, but and then that's how you knew her voice.
Yes.
I thought maybe you were like not looking at her.
No, I was looking at her and I was
okay.
going like, like when when you know somebody.
Sure.
And then just when I was getting ready, don't say anything.
Yeah.
Don't say anything.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Did you run into that a lot or not really?
Not a lot, but there was a lot of us that this party grew to, several hundred people.
Mm-hmm.
And people came in from all over the world, and after you started going to this, there was like 2 parties a year, and we, it was a kind of a religious retreat.
Mm-hmm.
We would go, and the funny thing is, you could go to the restaurant and sit down. And one day I was talking to this priest, thinking that he was a real priest. And then two ladies came in and sat on his lap, and he was, dressed as a priest because he liked to spank naughty girls. And so,
I love it.
And
That's great.
he was a character. So when I first met him, I seriously thought he was a priest. And I'm thinking to myself, buddy, you're in the wrong restaurant, the wrong hotel at the wrong time. And
I've met people who I thought were real doctors, and then I find out that they're just doing doctor play, and I'm like, I wonder if he's a real doctor in real life, because it really looks like he is. And wouldn't that be funny if that's also his fetish? Like, he gets to do it all day long for his job, something that, he loves and he gets off on. So, yeah, like, I've come across that too, and I think it's pretty cool.
it is really an interesting, it's an interesting world. And, when you get to, when you hang out with your friends that you meet, and we stayed in touch, we'd call each other, and everybody would show up at the same time. We usually go out a day early and come back a day late. And but it was really fun to run around with your Kinko friends at the hotel, and then you go back to normal life, back to home, and like nobody knows it. Nobody could figure out what I didn't tell them what. I'm going to go to a kinky party out in Palm Springs, California, but I mean, some of my friends knew.
Okay. So, what ended up happening to those people? Do you still keep in contact with
Some
them?
of them I have stayed in contact with. The people that run Shadow Lane, I know them pretty well. And that's the name of the organization, Shadow Lane.
And where did you say they are out of again?
Well, they're in Las Vegas now.
Okay, so they moved. Okay.
So originally they were LA based. And this hotel that they were at in Los Angeles when we first started going is one of those old 1950s. It wasn't a fancy hotel, but it had a lot of class to it because some movies were shot there, and Studio City is when you're there, you're in the middle of it.
So then, did you visit them when they were in Vegas?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So how's the scene in Vegas?
You know what is sad? Vegas doesn't really have a scene going on.
Okay.
The police are so tight on the ads. What's the one?
They have a beautiful people swingers club that is advertised.
Yeah, I went to a party, and it was it was very interesting. This place, I'm going to think of the name of it in a second. But what was neat about it, when I got there, they had a lot of stuff, and the guy that owned it, his mom was like the one was when you got there, you paid $25. And so this guy, I'm gonna guess this guy was in his 40s. His mom was about 65, and she's collecting the money. And the first thing you're thinking, well, that's a little different. But then, just when you start to play, you have these swingers come up.
Okay.
And so this place had a mix of BDSM and swingers in the same place at the same time, and that doesn't mix very good.
Why do you say that?
Because they don't understand what's going on. They would get in the middle, you'd be spanking somebody and inappropriate, walk up and, hey, can I join in? And it's like, who invited you?
Yeah, they don't know the rules of etiquette. Okay.
And so it was kind of awkward at times, and you don't want to, when you're at some place like that, you don't want to lose your cool and turn into, Frankenstein and start yelling it. And some people would lose it. And,
I've seen people do that. I've done shibari, where I'm the shibari model, and somebody's tying the ropes and people are getting too close, and then the guy is losing his shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny.
So there's that artificial fence around in your play space.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's
fine.
what he was saying. Like, you can't cross this line.
That's right. And sometimes they would take and put some rope around
that's
on the floor.
Hilarious.
On the floor,
that's a good idea,
and he would say, this is what what I'm doing. You guys are gonna watch, and you can ask questions at the end, but I don't want you to ask me questions during, and I don't want you to talk to the model.
Yeah, he's in the zone.
This area is here, and nobody comes in there, so it's fine. But then, what about the people that were over here that didn't hear that announcement, and all of a sudden they're walking up and they're looking
or touching,
and and it's like, hey, buddy, hit the road. Oh, whoops.
It's okay. So then, where did it spin off from there? You did California, you did Vegas.
Well, I spent a lot of time all over the place, all over the U.S. and international. So, naturally, being a kinko, I guess.
That's what you refer to yourself
as?
I like that. Because there's kinkster, there's kinko.
Yeah. It's just a silly way to refer to myself.
Sure.
So, that led me down the road of, everybody kind of knew me as the electric guy.
Okay.
Because,
that's your
I'm an engineer. I taught engineering. I know this stuff. And a lot of people don't have a clue what they're doing.
Well, what types of roles do you play? Are you doing, are you switching? Are you mostly dominant?
Mostly dominant. But what's kind of fun as a switch? I found that there's more doors.
Okay.
Right? The door doesn't go one way; it goes both ways. So it's really fun. And that was a neat thing for me, is that I had something that I could bring to the table, like showing them technique, safe ways to do electrical. And for me, that was really fun. And then quite often, one of the dominants would pull me and say, "Hey, can we go?" In other words, she wanted a little try it. Let's see.
And that's what I like. I'm like, let's just play with me. But I'm not a switch. I don't want to be a sub. The idea of bondage on me is not spectacular. It's a little farther than I like. I love to bind others, but shock me. I'm okay with that.
And the fun thing about that is that the dominants see you do something that they've never seen somebody do, and now I've all of a sudden got a lot of people ask me questions. Now keep in mind, that's what I love to do. That I love to answer people's questions. You want to get technical with me? Go for it.
Yeah.
That's what I
love to teach.
Yeah. And but that would lead you in an interesting direction, because many times, the dominants would want me to teach them and safe thing. Tell me about safety. Tell me about what about using electrical equipment in the chest area near the heart. What's okay to do? What's not okay to do? And then they would go, well, you taught me. Can I try this on you? And it's like, well, okay. Let's
try it on who? On you?
On me.
Okay.
So in other words, I just taught somebody how to do
things
something,
sure.
and so now I get to be the test dummy.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, actually, I think I was quite honored, almost every time, because it started in a really unique, interesting way, and it led to me teaching them, but also then I got to, and then I would kind of, hey, if you're going to play like this, then I'm going to give you feedback at the end. And so that you can, if it's not right, I'm going to tell you it's not right. And some people, they have a little borderline there. No. So it depends on the personality of the people.
Okay, that's cool. So then, back to the other question. So where did it spin off from there? I know you said you've lived everywhere. So what
I didn't live everywhere, but I worked a lot of places.
Oh, you worked everywhere. Okay, so did you get into all the different scenes all over the country?
Well, I visited all the New York clubs.
Okay.
I've been to the Vault.
How was that?
They were number one, they were really hard to find, and
Okay.
here's
Because
you're
they're
gonna
not
laugh.
advertised.
And you know the other thing is the thing that was missing in those early days? No GPS. So
Okay.
you would actually write down directions, and they would. And you know, if you're not from New York City, and the one-way streets drive you crazy, and then you get down into that industrial district, and you kind of have to figure out. You need to figure out the lay of the land to find these places. San Francisco had some really interesting places, which were impossible to find too. Los Angeles had a lot of clubs.
Okay.
So I would try to seek out these clubs. You know, when I was there, I'm going to be there for a while. Might as well do something fun, right?
Well, how did you find out about them?
They were in those magazines.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So everything
So you
is in
didn't
the
go,
magazine.
yeah, you didn't go to the internet and put www find kink. You know, it didn't happen.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. And then what about the San Francisco scene? Because I mean, a lot of it like got started with the gay community.
Yeah. And then you know what? That's a whole another interesting story. I found this one place, Mr. S, I think.
I do know that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I found this place, and there's a place in Los Angeles that was really amazing, right in Hollywood, that I'd spent a lot of time at because they had everything, and they had stuff that you wouldn't even. I mean, you saw all kinds of stuff, and everywhere else you went, you'd never find
Sure.
the goodies that they had. But so I was at Mr. S's. Is that Mr. C?
Mr. No, I think it's Mr. S.
Okay. And I'm looking at this stuff, and all of a sudden I kind of look over my shoulder. You know how you're always aware of, and there's people standing next to you. Next thing you know, they're a little closer, and it's like, you don't have to buy the same thing I'm buying at the same time, And then it's like the hammer hit me in the head. It was a guy, that was
Okay.
interested in finding another guy, and I was not
Okay.
that guy.
Sure.
So.
That's
It was
funny that he's doing
wrong.
that. That's
Yeah.
actually where I find a lot of my best toys. Is at like the gay leather conventions. They have amazing toys that
They
you
do.
don't see everywhere.
That's right. That's right.
IML, International Mr. Leather, like I find incredible things there. Or
Mm-hmm.
just going into like, the gay neighborhoods in Chicago and the little like adult shops and stuff. Like they have really cool stuff. So yeah, I love that. Okay, so where else did you go? What else did you see?
Well, Denver had a club, but you know what? Some of these clubs, like some of the things I found in Detroit, were basically, you'd read in a magazine, you'd show up, and it was a massage parlor.
Okay.
And it's like, you'd go in there and you're looking around, and it's like, wait a second, this doesn't seem quite right. And then they go, no, we got this other, and you go in one room and there's a spanking bench, and so
interesting.
these people were creative with their space, and not everybody.
Did they have massage tables too?
They did.
Okay,
They did,
so,
yeah.
so they did have
So
that.
this is a rub and scrub kind of a place.
That's funny. Okay.
And you know what? I guess when you stop and think about people being resourceful and working with what they have to work with, that I guess money's an issue for people, and
Sure.
they want it. So in other words, you look in the magazine and you find this place that you thought, well, this is a cool place to go. And like I said, you'd show up and it's like, kind of like not what we're used to.
Sure.
Yep.
So these magazines, they would have locations all over the United States.
Yep.
So it wasn't just like a local magazine in each town and you'd have to get it and then like here's
Some
all
of
the
them
Chicago.
some of them were local. Some of them were local.
Okay, so there's multiple
and
magazines.
they were pretty sleazy places. A lot of them. The magazines were in not in good places.
Oh, the locations that were listed? Is that what
No,
you're saying?
the magazines where you had the adult
Oh,
magazines.
to get
It's
the
like,
magazines.
Like yeah, it was
Oh,
like
I see.
some pretty sleazy places, and your feet were sticking to the floor as you're walking around. And it's like, I don't know about that.
Just to try to get the magazine.
Yeah.
And then you have to go find these locations.
Yep, that's right.
That's kind of
So
cool.
so we really have been spoiled by the internet, because now you pop up, you open your phone, and you
Sure.
can dig up something and get invited to somewhere, or go somewhere with somebody else, and some of the online like Collar Space. has.
I'm not a fan of collar space. It doesn't load properly for me, so I just stop checking messages, and then people will find me on Facebook, and I'm like, great, they can just PM me on Facebook because that's so much easier than trying to deal with collar space. FetLife I do like. Do you do anything with FetLife?
You know what? I have a screen name on there that's the same as my other one, and
Okay.
I just don't get there very often.
So you don't
And
use it.
I have a pretty busy vanilla world, so I'm always
Yeah.
like back and forth between trying to do what I'm supposed to do,
Yeah.
and playtime is not as often as I'd like it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just because you're so busy.
Yep.
So are those the two main websites that you end up using?
Yeah, I guess now, but
Okay.
I think also the community though. I've got friends in Chicago, some of which you and I both know, and,
Sure.
and it's nice to have friends, and that's just like your vanilla friends. You have your kinko friends, and you have your vanilla friends, and usually you don't want them to cross each other though.
Yeah, sometimes they do. It kind of
Yep.
depends.
Yep.
So what about like events, like finding events and stuff?
I think that like first of all the parties when the clubs have the parties, those are fun to
Yeah,
go
so
to.
where would you find the listing for the party? Would you go on FetLife and look at the event section?
Yep.
Okay, so just that's the way it is now. No more magazines, or is there still magazines in existence?
Well, I'm sure that there's probably magazines, but I'm
Okay.
not going to go look for them.
Okay, I'm just curious
Yeah.
what they would have listed.
Yeah.
Because everything's online these
Yep.
days.
And there's an interesting history of some of the Chicago clubs. I helped build one of them, and one of my
Which one was that?
that was Tina's place,
Okay.
and I did the electrical stuff, and I did some of the some of the help with some of the furniture. But we had it was really interesting. We had some of the people that were part of our crew, when we were building this, worked for Chicago Police Department.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, in other words, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. But, we knew who they were, and they were just like me and you.
Well, see, that's the whole thing. That's what I'm trying to show here. It's everybody has this misconception that it's all these weird people. It could be the guy next door who's super nice and friendly and cuts your grass when you're on vacation, and he's just a little kinky.
Yep. And sometimes it's Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, too.
Yeah, exactly. You get all kinds.
Yep. And you know what? Most of the time, at the clubs, and what I like is that a lot of the Chicago clubs have policed it to the point where the troublemakers are not allowed in.
Yes.
And once you're gone, you're gone. You're not coming back.
Yeah, blacklisted.
Yep. And I think that's good because some of the people that I've seen were inappropriate, didn't understand the space. This is your space, my space, and you're not invited at this time to be part of this unless we ask you to be part of it.
Is that the worst thing you ever saw? Was just people invading spaces?
Oh, I've seen some scenes go really wrong.
Okay.
Somebody
Because
caught
of intruders?
I've seen it go wrong because of intruders and not understanding, and you're just hoping that somebody's going to figure out who they are and ask them to leave.
Okay, so tell me about that if you don't mind. Some of the stuff that you've seen.
People really talking really loud and thinking that this is porno. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
here
biggest
I'm here for porno. I want to
misconception,
see cute little girls tied up naked and and like that.
Performing sexual acts.
And that's not what it's about.
Sure.
And so those people that's what they think that's about, that get there, they don't belong there. And then there's another group of people that end up somehow, I don't know why they get so attached to BDSM, where they've come from a messed up family, really bad, like
Do you see that
abuse.
a lot?
I've seen it a lot.
Me too.
And you don't pick it up right away, but then when you start talking to somebody and they say something to you, and all of a sudden it's like
It clicks.
it clicks, and it's like an inappropriate moment. Like that's not why we're here.
Yeah, I've actually had to drop clients because of that reason. Because
Yeah.
I felt like they were in it for the wrong reason.
Yep.
And I'm not going to add to their abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is supposed to be in fun. This is supposed to be about pushing limits. This is not about let me beat you because your father like beat the shit out of you and now you want it to continue because you're fucked up.
Yes.
You know.
Yep.
So yeah, I've had that.
And you know, when I said Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band,
Sure.
that's kind of where I'm coming from
Yeah.
on that, because that does happen.
And then go ahead.
Well, they find it on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, geez, you know, I want to go check that out, and you know, oh wow, I belong to that. You know, that's who I am. And then
Sure.
once you dig in a little bit deeper, then you realize, no, that's not what we're about. Maybe that's what you think this is
Sure.
about, but that's not where we're going.
Because they're just trying to relive it. The other thing that I've noticed is some people, they get so obsessed with their fetish that it just starts to overrun their life. And, you know, they'll be paying me for sessions, and I know, like, he just lost his job. He doesn't know where he's gonna, like, live next month. What are you doing? Your priorities are not there. And then those people I have to cut off. Yes, somebody else is going to pick them up as soon as they come up with money, pick them up, you know, to be their client. But like, I want people who are sane and sound and have their act together. And this is supposed to be just a fun thing, you know?
Yeah, and for the right reason.
And that's the other thing, and for the right reason, exactly. And so you've come across stuff like that too? Yep,
I've seen that. And I've also seen scenes that went wrong because the dominant, and here's where education comes in, electrical wise and like that, where, you know, when you go to a dominant and you assume they know what they're doing, and you know, you're at a party and you're playing, and all of a sudden you see somebody hit the floor and they're out like a light. And
I have never seen that happen.
Oh, I've seen that happen way too many times. And I actually caught a girl on the way to the floor, and the guy got really mad at me, and you know, it's like.
And that was electricity?
No, it was. They were, you know, she was suspended, and
see, that happened to me too.
And you know, somebody came down, and you know, I caught her before she hit the floor, and the guy got really mad, and he says, "You should have let her fall down," and it's like.
No, it doesn't work like that.
No.
So he didn't suspend her properly?
That's correct.
Okay, so mine was the knot slipped because he didn't have it tied properly. And so it ended up cutting off my blood supply in my neck. I could still breathe, but you know, you're going to go out.
Yep.
And like, I knew I was going to pass out. And before I passed out, I waved over two guys. And he, of course, he got mad because they're getting in his space.
Right.
To lift me up, to take off my body weight off the ropes. So then I could like reposition. And they're holding me there while he's trying to untie me. And you know how long that takes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah. And he did not want his ropes cut. And it was like, so I had two strong guys holding up my body weight so I can like breathe. And so like the blood flow is going to my head. And he's like slowly, gingerly trying to get these ropes off. And I'm not heavy, but these guys are like, come on, dude, cut these ropes. Like, what is this? And he was supposed to be a professional who worked, I don't want to say it, but I guess he worked at Bondage A Go-Go for many, many years before he retired. So, you know, I don't know. Like, it's just, it was a crazy thing. And I actually had another similar thing happen again with that kind of stuff.
And, you know, that brings us back, you know, being an educator, it's really important when you go to see somebody like you or somebody else that we're assuming that you are that person and you know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's when you see the difference between the pretend people that are there because they oh yeah, you know, they classify themselves as a dominant instantly, and everybody, you know, has to do things their way, which is fine when they're in their scene. That's who they are. That's what it's about. But then you realize they're full of shit, and they don't know what they're doing.
But they pretend to know what they're doing. It's not that they just want to learn. Because I feel like I learn something from every partner I have, even if they're, you know, being a submissive to me. I'm still learning things, like, along the way. And then even with switching, that's even better. Because you can really learn stuff.
That's right. And it's, you know, I think, and this is just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me, but I bet you will. Is that to learn, you know, some of these things, sometimes you have to do that. You have to be on the other side to experience
absolutely.
it and understand, pain tolerances and spanking tolerances and all that stuff. And then once you've been there, done that, then you're a little bit more educated and you have a little bit more knowledge behind you that makes you better at what you do.
That's very true. Because you can have a natural gift of reading people, but it might only be for one certain aspect. So mine would be corporal punishment, impact play. I'm great with that, and I can read people well, and I know what they can and can't handle, even if they don't think that they can handle anymore. But when it comes into other things, you need more knowledge. So, like, I have subbed, not really, but with electricity, because I don't know a ton about it. I know I love it. I love the way it feels. But, like, I learn something new from everyone who plays with me and who does it. And then it's kind of like a taking turns thing to, like, see how it goes.
Yep. That's right. That's right. And, a lot of this is about what's really fun, as an engineer. I could walk into a store and you're looking around, and this could be a store that had cooking supplies.
Sure.
And guess what you can find? You can find wooden paddles, which are spoons.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can find all kinds of stuff. So when you go in, and once the kinko part of you kicks in, you go to Farm and Fleet. Oh my God, there's
so many things,
thousands of things that you can buy, that you can improvise and make those things work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? I enjoy seeing those people and walking in and seeing, hey, somebody's doing something really interesting, and they improvise it. They made it themselves.
Yeah, that's very true. One of the things that I think hurts the most is there's a dog toy, and it's like where you can have, you can either be you and the dog kind of pulling it, but it's that thick rubber, and if you just kind of like tie it together and you hit somebody with that, it's crazy. And that's such a cheap toy, and it's not made for BDSM, but it's very effective.
That's right.
And it leaves really like interesting marks that don't look like anything else. And to a regular person, they're going to just be like, that's a dog toy. Like, that's all it does, but it could do so much more. So is it that same way with electricity? You can walk into a store and you'd be like, oh, I can do this and this and this and this. So tell me about that.
Well, first of all, we have to talk about somebody that's really the most amazing person in the world who came up with a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
And
Tesla?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Nikola Tesla. And he was so amazing. He was so far ahead of his time. And a lot of the inventions that he came up with, and one of the most, prevalent one of those is, he was friends with Edison. He worked for Edison for a while.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And Edison wanted to do everything with DC. And Tesla said, no, there's a lot of things that you can't do with DC that you could do with AC. And so this battle started, one way or the other, and Tesla won. And today the whole world is AC, and that's how it works. But there's so many things like Tesla coil. We all know that it's a violet wand. And there was a lot of quackery back in the days. When the violet wand came out, it was designed to cure all kinds of diseases. It was, and what's really fun, if you go back and you look at the history of BDSM, you find these things, and then you find, some article about something, and you start reading it, and you go, oh my God, look at this.
Is it the same violet wand that we have? What is it different? Is it the mechanical one?
No, it's a violet wand. It's a high frequency wand, but it was designed to cure cancer. It was designed to make your hair grow back. It was designed to do all this stuff.
Sure.
And I mean, back in the 50s, you could go to a shoe store and they had an X-ray machine, and they would X-ray your foot so that they could see where your bones were, and that's how you bought shoes.
Oh, wow.
You don't do that now, because there wasn't any safety, things around that.
Yeah, because they didn't know any better.
They didn't know better. And, so in the early days of some of this stuff, same thing happened. People pick it up and go, hey, I can do this with this, and it wasn't designed to do that. Now, it worked for that, but is it the right way to do it? Maybe not, but could be.
Yeah, absolutely. The violet wand today, I use it in esthetician work.
Yep.
for facials because it kills bacteria on the skin. So if somebody has a blemish, like I can get that swelling and inflammation down by getting rid of some of that bacteria on there.
And you know, that's the neat thing about violet wands is one of the first things that I do when I show it. I rub it on my hand and I hold my hand up.
To smell the ozone?
Yes.
I like that too.
And you know what's...
That's one of my favorite parts about it.
So rub it on there, you know, on the violet wand
Yeah.
and let them smell it. And you know what? They go, and here's the little trick that I like to do. What is that smell? That's the teacher side of me. What is that smell? What is that? And they go, wow, that smells familiar, but
so they don't know.
They don't know. And then here's your connection to that. After a rainstorm, lightning rainstorm, there's a lot of ozone, and you can smell it, and the air is purified by that. And you go into a restaurant, a lot of restaurants have those ultraviolet lights, and you know, it catches the bugs and stuff, and you know, that'll kill the germs too. Ultraviolet is a very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that.
They have water machines that run the water through the UV, and it does that, and even like sanitizing toothbrushes.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing what we can do with these things.
It is.
So what else besides the violet wand?
Well, the other one that's very popular that we like to use is a TINS unit. A TINS unit is a medical device, and most chiropractors have them, and it's so interesting, all the things that you can do with a TINS unit. And that's the thing where most people don't, this is the thing that I find that most people don't understand what a TINS unit does. And you know, if you took a voltmeter out of your bag, which I have, and you measure, now you won't measure a violet wand like that, but most people don't realize a violet wand could be up to 50,000 volts. Well, what comes out of the wall is 120 volts, and you're going, wait a second, that could be deadly to you. And then you're telling somebody that you have a violet wand that's like 35 to 50,000 volts. It's like, wait a second, how come that doesn't kill you 3 times over? And it has to do with understanding the electrical principles of current flow. A TINS unit, a violet wand is producing very high frequency, and it's a one-wire device. So the glass electrode is, you know, glowing, and the gas that's in the electrode
that's what's turning it purple.
That's what's turning purple. Or you know, I have some that turn red and different colors, and they look
depending on what gases are inside.
That's correct. And those are all what we call noble gases. Those are inert gases like xenon, krypton, argon, neon, all of those. And you know, neon signs, you see those signs all the time, and that's the same principle. So all this stuff came back out of Tesla, all this stuff. So now you asked me about the TINS unit. TINS unit is electrical device that stimulates the muscles, and our brain, you know, our brain is connected, you know, with nerves all through our body, and any of the movement that happens in our body is caused by your brain causing a muscle to contract, and that's what a TINS unit does. So a TINS unit, you can use the electrodes, you can use sticky electrodes, you can use it really, you know, in a very kinky way too with that. But it's just fun, all the different kinds of electrodes that you can use with a TINS unit for play, and it, you know, I love it.
Do you remember those weight loss belts that they had that were like contracting?
They still have them now.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Because it was such a fad. What did you think of that?
Well, it works good if you have wet skin, but if you have dry skin and you put it on, you're not going to be...
Well, they would give you like a gel.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But if you didn't use the conductive gel and your skin was dry and you put it on, and all of a sudden it's burning you.
Yeah.
And that's because
true.
All that energy is concentrated into one spot, and it does get through eventually, and it makes you do the hop and stomp.
But it didn't really make people like lose weight, because it's so much more than that. You got the diet, you got exercising, and they're just, you know, whatever size, and just slapping the belt on, and it's like shocking their stomach, and they think they're gonna have abs.
Yeah, most of that is hereditary. You know, you are what your family is, and your family history. A lot of that comes from where you came from, and so. But yeah, you're right. It's those things. But but the way the chiropractors use them,
Yes.
you know, when they're going to adjust you and you come in and you're in a really intense muscle spasm and all your muscles are tight as a rock, they can't adjust you very well. And what happens is once they put the TENS unit on you, and you know, gradually with TENS, it's kind of interesting. You turn it up until you feel it, and then you get used to it, and it's like, okay, well, we can go a little bit more. And what happens is the lactic acid in the cells gets released, and the muscles relax, and then the chiropractor can manipulate you, and then you have a successful, you know, journey at the chiro snapper, as I call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did have that done after a car accident on my back. It was fine. I mean, like, who knows if it helps or it doesn't help or whatever. For me, the ultrasound machine, I felt that, like, deep heat, that seemed to give the most amount of relief. But the TENS unit, it's a really interesting feeling.
Mm-hmm. And you know, most TENS units, this is where the engineer part comes in. You're just the one thing, you know, our body is electromechanical, and you know, the liquid that's in the cells is what conducts the electricity to the muscles. So somebody that just slaps a TENS unit on somebody and doesn't understand about the frequency, how fast what in the kind of wave that you're doing. So one of the units that I got when I was teaching out in Seattle, I bought one called a Sexy Box. And one thing that was the best thing about this is it had a speaker on it.
Okay.
And you can hear what they feel.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so when you watch somebody, just like you talked about impact play, and you watch somebody, when you turn a TENS unit on and you turn it on slow and gradually, so till you know somebody starts to, you know, have the sensation of the feeling, what you want to do is dial them in. And if you have the frequency real high, our bodies can't move our muscles very fast.
Okay.
So if you turn it on a real high frequency, all you get is just a splash of feeling like you can't really do anything, and the muscles can't react that quickly.
Okay.
So what you want to do is you want to have the TENS unit dialed down in frequency so that it's pulsing, and it's pulsing at such a frequency that you're going to get movement, and you'll see
the
that.
Muscles contract.
And so the neat thing probably that you experience with this is you're watching them, and yeah, that's you're going to get the most amount of muscle movement. But when you have a speaker and you can hear it, then you can dial them in and kind of watch them, and it really helps you get right to where you want to go pretty quickly.
That's interesting.
And it's really, really works well.
I also had a chiropractor use the acupuncture needles, but they were connected to, like, electricity.
Yep.
To I don't know what that box is called.
TENS.
Oh, is that what it was? And then it includes the needles.
Yes. And then instead of using sticky pads, you use and I love this, but it's really hard to find somebody that will say, "Hey, I'm going to put needles in you. I'm going to connect it up to a TENS unit." And so I call that electric needle play, and I love doing that.
Okay, I've only done that with medical reasons, but not in play. But yeah, it was really interesting, and I think it really does help, like, heal people too. Yeah,
and it does. Besides heal people, it does other things too.
Yes, exactly. So let's talk about the fun parts of the Violet Wand, of the TENS unit, and all these things. Like, what do you like to do with them? What are the different things you can do with them?
Well, one of the first things I like to do is I like to turn somebody into a light bulb.
Okay, where they're holding it
and so here you can hold that up and show them. That's just a regular. Wait, we're in the dark here for a second. Okay, so this is just a regular fluorescent light bulb, but it's got phosphor in it.
Okay.
And phosphor will react to high frequencies. And what's interesting is you can make that thing light up without even connecting it to a violet wand. So the violet wand, if you bring the wand up close enough to this, if I turn this violet wand on,
so just in proximity,
I don't even have proximity. The RF, the radio frequency energy that's generated by this violet wand, will strike the phosphor, and it will. This is what a picture tube on a CRT.
Okay,
this is the same technology. It's called kinematics.
Okay.
And this will cause that phosphor to excite, and it'll start lighting up. So you can you can actually hold the electrode here, and I can take this side of it, and I can touch you with it, and you're going to see.
I'll be able to feel.
You'll be able to feel it pretty good. Plus, you'll be lighting the light up.
Do you have to keep it in close proximity, and then how far away can you get? When does it die off?
This will work if you bring the fluorescent tube near the violet wand. It'll light up by itself.
Sure.
Without you doing anything. You can hold it by the glass.
But as far as like shocking somebody,
if you want to shock somebody, then you can use the body pad, or you can hold the electrode so that I become the conductor.
Yes.
And by the way, I want to say one thing that's really important.
And I'm going to show this
too. When you're messing around with...
So this is the violet wand, but we're missing the
Here,
attachments.
let's put an attachment on it so that they can see something.
Okay,
right.
There we go.
Okay.
So it has a metal end. There's a rake there. You'd put it in, turn it on, and then it would light up.
Yep. And inside of this glass tube is... Here, you can hold it up for a second. Inside of this glass tube is neon, argon, krypton, xenon gas.
Very nice.
And these should not be inserted into people.
Oh,
and
I
you know
wouldn't
why?
think so. Well, first
you
of
know
all,
what?
it's glass.
That's correct. And guess what happens when you touch somebody with somebody and they jump?
Yeah.
Guess what happens?
It's cracked.
It breaks. Yep. And you know what? It could cut you.
That reminds me of a YouTube video that I saw of a guy who was trying to sit on a glass cup. And he was inserting the cup into his behind, and it cracked. And then you see him scream, and all this blood, and it was just like, dude, it's glass.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Now, what would strike me strange about that is when I'm in the ER and I'm explaining to the doctor
Yes.
how I got here.
Oh my goodness. So are there insertable things that you
There
can
are
use?
there are some sheaths that can go on some of the attachments, but you have to be really careful with that because you don't want to break. And here's the other thing. This is made out of glass.
Sure.
Right? These break really easily. If you drop that on the ground,
absolutely.
it's done. Right? And so one of the things that you have to be aware of is that people might flinch. When you touch it, and they might break it. So
when I play, I usually have somebody bound pretty tight,
and then you know that they're not going to come off the table.
Damage my equipment.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep. So bondage actually works really well with electrical play. But there's a lot of other things in my hand. Here, hold this up for a second, and we're going to let them figure out what the heck that is.
Yeah, I was seeing that when you were walking.
Here, let me give you a little piece of something else here. Here you go. Hold that up for a second here.
Okay, so is this what this is?
Yep.
This is the filament?
Yep. This is electric fence wire.
And I see,
and
I
if
see
you
the
look,
metal in it.
there's like 3 or 4 conductors in there.
Okay.
And so this is what an electric fence would be, and it works great for working with violet wands because of what you can do with it.
Okay.
So I can actually hold the violet wand like this.
With an electrode attached.
Yep, and hold it with my hand.
Now you're running the current through your body.
That's correct.
And
then you use this,
and
you
the
run
current is coming out of your hand into this
into
filament.
them.
Sure.
And then, so with a violet wand, though, once you grab a hold of something, you become the conductor, and you don't feel it.
Yes.
But when you go to the smallest point, like I saw that you had some.
Well, like I would feel it when I hold it, but then as soon as I'm transferring it somewhere else, I don't.
Once you're holding onto this, you won't feel it.
Okay.
You'll hear it, and the sensation.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, the
it's
sensation
just the
is that it's there. But once you become the conductor, then you're not going to sense it. Now, here's one of the things that I was going to say that's important to people to realize. When you start messing around with 30,000 volts going through you, you don't want to have this and this in your pockets.
Oh, and people don't think about that.
It'll ruin
Cell phones
and watches, electronic watches, and everybody now is buying, iWatches and Apple. And so if you have that stuff in your pocket, it's probably not a good idea because it's going to end up, it's static electricity. It's going to kill it.
Sure.
And then it's not going to work.
Yeah, and I would think people don't even think about that.
No, they don't. So when you start playing this stuff, then you don't want to have electronics, in your pocket.
So what about those little metal fingernails that come with the violet wand?
those are guitar picks. One of the best places to go is buy banjo picks. You go to a music store and get some metal banjo picks.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that people don't realize is if you go like this with 4 of them on, it's not going to work very good.
Sure.
Because they become part of the conductor. So when you're working with a violet wand, you want to keep something moving, and you want to be to the least point that you can be at.
Just above the skin. Is that what you're talking about?
No. So with something like this has metallic threads. Here, hold that up.
You're just talking about a fine point.
I'm talking about anything where you're going to touch them. Once I grab a hold of you, then there's no sensation.
Sure.
But if I go down to the least point where I'm touching you with my skin, or just take your ring and touch somebody, and it's like, now that's the other thing. People say, oh, they have nipple rings on, and it's like, oh boy, you can't. No.
So how would you use those metal? Like I have the metal fingernails. How would you use those?
As lightly as possible. 1 or 2 of them, not 4 of them at a time. Because when you divide it up between 4 of them, the sensation is gone.
Well, yeah, but the audience doesn't understand how to do it. So you would have the violet wand.
Yep, I have the violet wand in my hand.
Conducting.
And then
you'd have the fingernails on, and then it would transfer it onto...
to the person that you're touching.
To the other person.
And you know what? That's the fun part of where you're going to touch them, too.
Yes. Yeah, we didn't even delve into that yet.
No. But, so the idea to make this work the best is to either use the electrode on them directly, or if you want to be the conductor, then you can hold on to the electrode and you can use things like this.
Sure.
Or you could do fun things like this. Here's a regular light bulb. And there's a little gas in there. There's some nitrogen.
Is this the one that turns red?
No, this one looks like a bunch of lightning bolts inside.
Oh, very cool.
Now, I don't know. We might be able to, if I hold this over there, and we might be able to do this here just to show, and you can put it in as B-roll. We could shoot this with this on, and you could see it, and we could maybe darken it a little bit because it's going to look like lightning bolts inside of there.
Okay.
The filament will not light, so the filament is the tungsten conductor in there, and light bulbs have two connectors, here and here, and a normal current flows through the filament and lights it up. Okay. What's happening here is that this is one wire, the one wire device that I was talking about, and when you connect this up to this, what's happening is the gas that's inside this is a regular light bulb. This is a 100-watt light bulb. Incandescent light bulb. All right? And what's going to happen is this electrode, or the filament, is connected to both sides of this. So now it's a one-wire device, and it's going to look like lightning.
That's very cool.
And it smells really good. Now, if you're holding this, after a minute, something's going to happen that's not a really good thing.
Burn.
It's going to get hot.
Yep.
So those little lightning things like that will start to get warm, and you're going to have to take your hand off it because it's going to get hot. And it will, if you leave it on there, it will burn you eventually.
So what about the other type of violet wand with the grounding rod? Can you talk about that?
Yep. So instead of us using this glass electrode, we have a piece that's got a wire on it, and it fits into here. And then what you're going to do is, this is going to be gone. You want to hold that up?
Yes.
So this is going to be replaced. Is that in?
Move it a little closer to your face. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is this electrode is going to be replaced with something that looks very similar to this, but it's going to have a wire on it, and it's a metal pad, and usually you can put it by your belt. But you want to make sure that it makes a good contact really well. Because if it's not...
I usually put the rod inside my bra, so then it's nice and tight, and it's not going to fall out.
Yep, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Then you become the radiating element. That's what we call it, the radiating element. And then you can do things with your fingers and stuff like that. Now, the problem with that, though, is as soon as you go to try to adjust the level.
Yeah, the setting.
It's going to jump from your fingers, it's going to jump from your fingers to the violet wand, and it's going to make you almost drop the violet wand.
And
it's going to surprise you.
I have had that happen before, and then I'm like, oh my God, this equipment's so expensive.
Yes.
I don't want to break things.
That's right. That's right.
Yes.
So sometimes, and the other thing is you have to stay away from the front of the violet wand.
Mm-hmm.
When you get too close to it, it's going to arc directly to you, and it's not going to hurt you, but it's going to surprise the heck out of you.
So I actually use that as extra torture, where I make people touch it.
Yeah, you're pretty ruthless here.
I know. Well, that's why it's malicious. Malicious Melissa.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my favorite.
So you live up to your name then.
I do.
Yeah.
I figured that out real quick, that I could do that, and like that's what I need to do. And how close can I get it to their lips, or like their really sensitive areas?
Here's kind of something that a lot of
nose.
people don't realize is that this, when it's arcing like that, generates a lot of a lot of ultraviolet. So if you run this,
I do know that.
And
yeah,
if somebody
it'll burn.
If you have
I
red
have
hair,
them blindfolded.
and blue eyes, you're going to be super sensitive.
Oh, sure.
And if you run this up and down their arm, you know what it's going to look like in an hour? Like you took a red
sunburn.
pin and you're going to have sunburn marks.
And I've had that before, because as you said, the finer point implements, those are the ones that are going to produce, the most pain. So I'll have somebody do a paper clip on me, because that hurts the most, basically. And they'll just run it on, and it's like they're drawing and branding on my skin, and it'll only last for 3 or so days, but it's a sunburn.
Yeah,
that's essentially what it is.
That's it. And you know what I brought along here is, this is really fun.
So this is like a scarf, but it has metallic filament. Foil inside.
Now, what's interesting is you see how shiny this is,
Yes.
right? What you're looking at is you're looking at the foil that's in there.
Yes.
This is conductive.
I have a sweater of this, all this material.
And you know what's neat? When you do this with a violet wand, these threads are running this way. You'll have lightning bolts going everywhere.
Okay.
And that's what it looks like.
So how would you do it? Would you do it the same way, where you're holding on to...
Nope. I do this a little different. I would use the electrode on the violet wand.
Okay.
All right. So I put the electrode here.
It's
Let's
over
put
there.
this back in here.
Yep.
Put that on there. And maybe put this around their shoulders.
Sure.
Or
Drape it
across
over.
them.
Okay.
And the good thing is you can wash this too.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you could drape this around their shoulders, and then when you touch this with them, instead of it just being right here, it's everywhere at the same time.
Because it's running through their body,
It's right.
and now they have
and
the
it's
scarf
arcing.
on.
It's arcing to them, and that's what this is. This has got threads in it. So if you took a whole bunch of these, like maybe a foot long, and you tied them together, you could use it like a little broom. And I have one of those attachments like that. So this is really kind of mean.
Well, do you ever drape? What do you call this? The electric fence, like around somebody, and then
you
do
could,
it?
or just lay it on them, because
that's what I mean.
see if it makes a good contact, then it's not going to have any sensation. So you're going to have to be moving it.
Okay.
You're going to have to move.
Where this, you could just leave it on.
You could leave
and
that
not have
on
to
them,
move it
and
on
then touch
them.
this with a violet wand, and then it goes everywhere.
Okay, I see.
Yep.
That's very interesting.
It is very, very interesting. Very fun.
So, with the other violet wand that is not the same. There's mechanical. What are the two names for that?
Well, that's a Van de Graaff generator. That's static electricity generator, and that's going to be kind of awkward to use, because you're not going to be able to hook somebody up to it very easily. Okay. That's a Van de Graaff.
And then there's the two types of violet wands. So we have, what is this one called?
Well, this one here is, violet wand or a Tesla coil.
Tesla coil. And then what's the other one where you're holding the rod?
Where you're holding, that's a body pad or body electrode.
Yeah, but I thought that there were two different types of violet. I know there are two different types of violet wands. They have names. I'm not exactly sure what they are. I know I'm racking your brain right now.
Well, I'm trying to see if I'm tuning into what you're asking.
What I'm
me.
saying. Okay. I would have to Google, and I don't want to do that in the middle of this. Okay.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to hold this one up for a second.
Well, actually, the one where you would be using metal instruments, but not necessarily with this kind of violet wand. So you would have the grounding cable like in my bra, and then I would be using a fork to. So what is that still just called?
That's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just a
called...
different attachment. Now, the reason I bring this up is if you go to the fabric store, if you notice this looks like Halloween here.
It does, yeah. There's spider webs on it.
This does absolutely zero nothing.
Okay.
It is not metal. It's
okay, but you thought it was, and
yeah,
then
of
you
course.
tried
And
it
I went
and
and bought it,
work.
and you know, and it's like wow, look at this. This is gonna look really neat
for sure.
And it ends up being a big fat zero. It doesn't do anything, and it's not conductive.
Okay.
And it has no metal properties. Where
How about that one?
This one definitely does.
And you can't just tell by feel whether something is going to conduct or not.
What you have to do is read the label, and it says metallic threads. And you know, I think this one has a burn hole in it where the violet wand got a good connection to it.
Okay.
On one of the corners here.
Have you ever done any branding with the violet wand?
I have not.
Because they do have branding.
Yep.
What would they be called? Like implements?
Branding electrode.
Yeah, the electrodes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have not done that.
Okay, are you opposed to that?
No.
It just hasn't come along
yet. It wasn't something that hit the fan yet.
Okay, that's interesting. So what other types of things do you do with electricity?
Well, you know, the different colored electrodes, and you know, when you come at somebody with you know what an electric stove looks like, those are called cow rods. Mm-hmm. You know, the electric elements on a stove. I have one violet wand attachment that has neon gas in it, and it lights up red. And when people see it, they think
it looks like a hot
like
plate.
you're gonna burn somebody.
Oh, that's very cool.
And you know.
So then you get a little bit of the fear element. Do you like adding the fear to your play?
Yeah, because when somebody sees you coming at them with this, that's what that.
And it's going to be red.
And it's going to look like it's red hot.
Be hot. Yeah.
It's going to look red
but
hot.
It's not. But
and
it'll
you know
look
what?
Like it.
That has neon gas in it. It hardly can get out of its own way.
Okay.
In other words, it doesn't do much.
Yeah,
but
it's gentle.
But when people see it, then it's like, you're not going to touch me with that, are you? You know, and then they're really worried that you're going to burn them with it. And so there's a little bit of, you know, mental messing with people when you're doing this.
And
stuff
you do
too.
Enjoy that aspect.
Of course.
Okay.
I mean,
well, yeah. Tell me about how you play. So you're very technical. You got all the equipment. You know exactly what you're doing. What would a scene be like, or what was your best scene?
Well, probably, you know, let's go down that road that bondage is good.
Okay.
And sometimes...
How do you like to bind? Do you do leather cuffs,
leather cuffs,
rope?
Handcuffs, whatever works, and whatever, you know, sometimes the furniture, whatever it might be, that's good too.
Okay.
The other thing is that when you use a blindfold, that adds a lot to it, because
I usually do that.
Then people are going to have to see with their ears. Mm-hmm. And that's always interesting when people can't see what's going on, but they can hear it. Mm-hmm. And then intentionally, you want to get next to them and you want to mess with them because they don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever play with like earplugs for like some sensory deprivation?
I have noise canceling headphones that I've used.
Okay, so you do that.
I've done that before, and that's fun too.
Okay, and you'll do that even with the electricity play?
Yep.
So do you do other types of play like without electricity?
But let me say this. I would not do the noise canceling headphones with this because you're going to ruin them. So.
Oh, sure.
That's
true. That's a good point.
Because of the static electricity.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why I said earplugs.
Yeah.
So then they don't know what's coming.
That's right.
Okay.
And when they're blindfolded too, you know, that's sensory deprivation like that is going to be magical moments. Mm-hmm. Like that.
So what other types of like scenes do you do?
Well, I think it's fun, you know, obviously bondage and then, you know, tell them that you're going to use electricity on them.
Sure, absolutely.
And I tried to avoid the face though, because, you know,
So why do you? Is it because of the eyes? Because you're scared for safety? Because you could just put a blindfold on.
Yeah. I think most of it is that, you know, people's skin on their face is really sensitive. Now, you were talking about a violet wand for use cosmetic use.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's lower lower power.
And that's the one that I would use
Yes.
for the face.
Right.
It's made for the face, and I
Right,
would use
and
it
so-
for the face.
But it's dialed down a lot more than what we're going to use with this.
Sure.
So,
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would do their lips. What about like teeth?
well, teeth are not very conductive except for maybe the saliva that's on them.
I don't know what it is, but the teeth really hurts. I don't know if it gets to the nerve
And I'm sure that's what it does.
or what, whatever's happening. But
It'd be like
the
going
teeth,
to the dentist and
tongue,
having the dentist drill on you
yeah,
with that Novocaine.
absolutely. And like the tip of the nose, the lips, like those are where you see the most reactions. Sometimes the ears, but not everybody. I mean, everybody's kind of different. But I've noticed that like the thicker skin, less reaction.
Right.
And the thinner skin, way more reaction.
Or moist skin with electrical play is the best.
Yes.
Somebody, and you can tell when you feel somebody's hand, your hand is like medium. You're very conductive. But if you feel somebody's hand and their hand's dry and like almost lifeless,
Not hydrated.
then you're going to have very little impact on them.
Yeah, so I did notice that with hydration that makes a difference.
Yes. Yep.
Whether somebody's well hydrated or not, and then how.
And also,
how
when you
reactive
pinch their
they are.
skin and you see if the elasticity of their skin is there,
Sure.
the doctor tests you.
Yeah,
like that to
absolutely,
see
for
if you're-
hydration. Okay, so what about the TENS unit now? Did we cover everything with the violet wand and the kind of things that we do with that?
the electrodes and doing things with this and flogging, using a flogger.
Yeah, like the Mylar.
The Mylar flogger.
Yeah.
Yes, those are great. And they hurt.
And I like the little sparks
Yep.
that they give off,
And that's
too.
when it's good to do this in low light.
Yes, so
Otherwise,
then it's a show, too.
yeah, it becomes a show and a dinner.
So you hit, exactly. You've got the smell.
Yep.
So it's like all of your senses
That's
are
right.
engaged.
That's right.
And maybe that's why I think I like electricity so much. I love the smell. I love the visual. And then I love the feeling. Do you remember like the first time you felt electricity?
It was one of those early California parties where somebody had a violet wand, and back then they were really crude.
Okay.
They were
Meaning more intense or a little gentler?
they were not very safe. And
Okay,
they were,
yeah.
And the thing is with violet wands is there's a lot of them running around that don't have a 3-wire cord on them. And you want to look for when you're buying a violet wand, you want to buy one that doesn't have this thing on it.
That doesn't have what on it?
That doesn't have. You want to use it as a grounded receptacle.
So do you want the third prong or you don't want the
It's
third
safest to use it that way. Yes.
prong? Okay, so where's yours?
Mine. This is an older one, but I modified it so that if you notice that one of these is thicker than the other,
Yes,
you can only
yes.
plug that in the right way.
Okay, so then
And
you're not
so this
running
prevents
into...
you from getting what we. And here's a term that you're going to love. It's called hot chassis.
Okay.
You don't want a hot chassis. That means that'd be like you having your toaster hooked up wrong, and you run over and you touch the toaster and the water, and you get shocked. So this is going to keep, even though this wand could be plugged in. So that's why I put this on it. And the other one I have is a 3-wire, but this is on there, and I've got it taped and glued on there, so you can't take this off. So it can only go in the right way.
Okay, so you
But when it's a
modified it.
2-wire, when it's a 2-wire and it can plug in either way, then you can get into trouble.
That's
and you have to be
interesting.
careful with that.
I actually had a couple things happen to me, like in households with electricity. So my first time that I ever felt the shock, I was helping change outlets with my parents in like a new home that they had bought, and like he didn't let us know that he had turned the power back on. So there my hands are doing these things, and I felt it. And you get the shock, and you're like, oh my God, like you just shocked me. And then I was like, wow, that actually feels kind of good. And I think I was 12. So that was the start of it. And then, from there.
And you realize that and this is one of the things that, with about electrocution, when people are working with power tools, is that if you get hooked up the wrong way, you can't let go of it.
Yes. I was able to let go.
Yes. So here's
I don't know if you shut it off and I let go or what, because it happens so fast.
And you know what? When you're doing something, it's called the one-handed electrician's rule. You know what that is?
So you have one hand free.
You put one hand in your pocket and you work with one hand, and you have shoes on, and then you don't have a problem. So you could touch the you could touch the hot,
because you're grounding yourself.
You're not grounded. You're not grounded. There's no here. Let me tell you this.
Explain.
Here. This is a really important one. Trace electron flow before it traces you.
Okay, you're gonna have to explain.
I will. I'll be happy to. That means that you can walk over and touch the hot wire, which is the black wire on the outlet, as long as it can't go anywhere.
Okay.
Right? So if you put one hand in your pocket and you're working with one hand, and you have shoes on, rubber shoes, leather shoes, and you're not grounded. You're not grounded. You can work on hot wires all day long and not feel anything, and not even hurt you.
So how would you feel something? Like, I don't remember what my position was. I can tell you I was probably barefoot.
You were touching something else, and it went through you. That's what happened.
Okay.
Yep. It went from your hand, probably
I probably had one hand on the wall.
Well, possibly. The wall wouldn't do it unless you
idea.
were see that's the other thing that people don't realize. What's conductive?
Yes, what's conductive?
Right? And if the
box is metal.
Yeah. And if you were touching the box with the other hand, guess where it's going to go? It's going to go right through you.
And exit
and
to
it's
the
going to go.
box.
It's going to go where you don't want it to go.
In your chest.
70 milliamps will kill you.
And what is a normal outlet?
Well, normal outlet here. So when you talk about normal outlet is 120 volts AC.
Okay.
60 hertz, 60 cycles per second. What causes the damage is the current. Not the voltage, it's the current.
It's the current.
And the current is like talking about, the current is what does the work.
Okay.
So current in the electrical equation is the E times I. It gives you, it's an equation, but voltage and current work together.
Okay.
And so what'll hurt you is the current. And that's what that.
So is that enough current in a household?
Oh yeah,
to
absolutely.
Do it to you? Okay.
Absolutely.
So
and your body impedance. That's how conductive you are. Your hand is your hand is pretty wet. Not wet, but
it's just like I'm not moist, but I have moisture in my skin.
You are a resistor. A resistor is an electrical device that's got resistance. If I used a voltmeter or an ohm meter and I measured from one hand to the other, I could measure your body resistance. Okay. Okay. So what happens is when that voltage goes through you, if you're a good enough conductor, you're going to have a lot of current flow through you, and it's going to do damage.
And then the other thing that ended up happening was someone had replaced so you have those wall air conditioners. Those are a higher voltage outlet. So what are those? 220s?
240.
So they replaced whatever it was, a 220, a 240, with a regular outlet, whatever that is, but just the casing that you would plug it in. And I don't know how they got it to work, but it worked. And I plugged in the vacuum. The vacuum made a huge noise. It was crazy. And then I felt something on the vacuum. So that was bad. That really scared me. And then other people got involved and who did that? And that's dangerous. And oh my God, we got to put the 220 on or the 240 on.
You know what we should invite people to do is watch Mythbusters.
I do like Mythbusters.
So scientifically, when we talk about electrical devices and electric play, if you understand the basic concept of what's going on, like I just explained, what we call the one-handed electrician's rule. If you work with one hand and you're not standing in water, you're not standing barefooted, you can work all you want on hot circuits. When we say something is hot, that means it's on. Yes. And so the hand in the pocket is not to touch your body. It's just you're not touching anything conductive. See, when you make a circuit, when you go from your hand through your body to something else, if I'm touching the metal of the sink, guess where it's going to go? It's going to go right through you. But if you put your hand in your pocket and you're working with one hand, even if you touch that wire.
But you can put your hand behind your back too, right?
Sure, just don't touch it.
You're just not touching
but see, if you put it in your pocket, then it can't go anywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So totally makes sense. And then you wouldn't have to have on the rubber shoes, or you would?
You want to make sure that you're not standing on concrete. Concrete is conductive.
It's conductive.
Yep.
Okay.
And you want to make sure you're not standing in water, But if you're in shoes like leather shoes or rubber
Sure.
shoes or sandals,
I didn't know concrete was conductive.
yeah, it is.
Is it because it's so porous?
Well, it's got metals. It's got iron and
it's
stuff.
what
in
it's
it.
made
Yeah,
out of.
what's inside of it.
Okay.
They have plastic that you could buy that's conductive plastic. It's got carbon in it.
Yeah, it has,
and
like,
it becomes conductive. So
that's interesting.
yeah.
So now back to like the TENS unit. How would you use that for BDSM play? What kind of things can you do with that?
A lot.
Oh, well, I know, but can you go over some of these things?
Sure. Keep in mind. So here, let's go back for 1 second. A violet wand is a one-wire device. Mm-hmm. There's one electrode, and it's generating high-frequency static electricity. And when you touch it, and you touch somebody else, you become the conductor, and you're going through.
Sure.
A TENS unit is anywhere between 50 volts to maybe 400 volts. Now, again, what comes out of the wall is 120, and we're talking about something that's higher voltage than that. The current is less. The current on this, the thing that does the work on a violet wand is very low, like in the really low numbers. With a TENS unit, the TENS unit is designed so that it can't ever exceed 70 milliamps. And 70 milliamps will stop your heart.
Okay.
So the TENS unit is
would the TENS unit be safer to use for BDSM play than the violet wand?
The TENS unit is a medical device.
Yes.
So you kind of when you step into that role, you kind of have to know what you're doing a little bit.
With the TENS unit.
With any of this.
Well,
anytime
with all
with
of it, because it's all electrical.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's probably not a bad idea when you're going to work in a place to have a GFI. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that is?
So that's the little box
that when you plug in,
yeah.
So you have it in your kitchen and your bathroom, and what that does,
it'll shut off
within 3 cycles. So in the U.S. we have 60 cycle circuits.
Sure.
So within 3 cycles, that'll shut off that circuit, and so it'll prevent you from, if you have a fault, that's what it is. It's a ground fault interrupter. If you have a fault, it will shut that circuit off so that it protects you. And
you could just plug your violet wand into one of those that it's going to just shut off.
Well,
that would work too, right?
Yeah, the only reason that you want to have a GFI is so that you don't ever put somebody in a position where you have a hot chassis and you got AC flowing through them.
Okay.
So a GFI will protect you.
Well, because like my violet wand is more, it's more for like the face, so it's a little gentler. Yep. And if I plug it into a regular outlet and I have, the track lights that you can dim, you can see the lights, whatever I'm doing with the switch, and the lights are going up and down and up and down.
And you know why? That's the radio frequency energy that's in this. That's also what's making this light up.
Okay.
So these are producing, so when we talk about RF, RF is radio frequency. There's a lot of energy. That's how a radio station works. Yeah. A radio station has a very high-powered transmitter, which is transmitting RF. So you have a radio transmitter here that's actually causing this to work. That's this violet wand. A TENS unit is a 2-wire device. Uses sticky pads, uses all kinds of different electrodes that you can use for,
well, I know a lot of guys like it put on their testicles. Yep. The TENS unit, and then they do that.
Only if they're tied.
Oh well, yeah, because it's going to be.
Yeah, they're going to be all over the place.
Control.
Yeah.
That's funny.
First reaction is to get away from it, but if you're tied up, you can't go far, right?
Sure. So back to that again. So what about the different kinds of play?
Well, different kinds of play. Pick your electrode, what you're going to do. You can have some that you can, since it's a 2-wire device, you're going to put a pad somewhere and use the other one. And there's a lot of different attachments. And there's some that use this rubber that has carbon in it that it's conductive. So you can use that, in a cock ring or, a lot of different things.
Okay.
So there's many different conductors, including needles, which we mentioned earlier, where you're using the needle as a conductor, as what we call electrode. And
what areas of the body do you like to do it on? Do you like it to do it everywhere?
Well, when I do it, I'm not playing with men, so I wouldn't,
so you only play with women?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you're playing with a dom and she wanted to, do that to you, obviously, the first place you might go for CBT is that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's sensitive.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's very sensitive.
And that's my go-to. And also nipples.
Yep.
And then I also do where I'll do like nipple clamps that'll make the nipples very sensitive anyways, and then put the electricity on it.
What I bought out in California at one of the parties, somebody had a cupping unit. But the cupping unit had been made. You know what the cupping unit looks like?
I don't.
Right? Oh, and what's a real famous swimmer? Michael Phelps.
Yes.
Did you see him during the Olympics? That he took his shirt off and he had these big.
Oh, I know what that is. Yeah, like fire cupping.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
I thought there was like an electricity cupping that I'm missing.
I have them.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
So there is an electricity
Yes,
cupping.
and what it is, it's a regular cup,
Uh-huh.
a vacuum cup, but it's got foil on the inside and on both sides.
Okay.
And so when you put it on the skin and you suck it down, you remove the air, the foil becomes connected to the skin, and then you get the sensation of, the vacuum can be pretty intense by itself. Mm-hmm. But when you add the electrical element to it, it becomes kind of bitey.
Okay.
And so, especially with the nipples and things like that, and on the skin. So then you've got a whole nother element to it, which is fun.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
So I call it electric cupping unit.
Okay, is that the actual name for it?
It's what I made up.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
that's funny. Any other types of play that we haven't discussed?
Well, again, bondage table, bondage bench, is really good for that. And playing with women, if you really tune in, and this is fun also when you're doing, genital play with women, you can create just a firestorm in a good way.
Yeah.
You can be very, and
where they can orgasm from
almost continuously, and then I've had several times where we had to stop because they were like, just couldn't go on.
It's too much.
Yeah, you become overstimulated.
What about for a guy? Is there a way to get him to achieve an orgasm with electricity?
Yep.
And how would you go about doing that?
Same thing. Tune into somebody really well when you're watching them. Just like just tune into their breathing and their sensitivity, how sensitive they are to that, and get it to the point and go up and over that threshold where you've got them. That then it'll a lot of times there's not a lot of muscles in the penis, but those things will react in the area around it.
Yeah, I've noticed that where it'll be like a lot of pre-cum coming out. Yeah, that kind of stuff. But like not actual like orgasms are happening.
Well, you can. It depends, on the person. Some guys are more sensitive than others, and
you wouldn't require any kind of like manipulation with the hands or whatever. It's strictly just
it could be an electrical orgasm.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So that's actually a thing.
Yeah.
So is that your best scene?
Those are fun.
Okay.
Here's when you say your best scene, I think their best scene is when there's good communication between both of you, and there's a good, powerful power exchange there, and you're paying attention to their needs, and you get them going, and that's why I said the TINS unit with a speaker, so I can hear, and then I can change the waveform. And keep in mind, what we're doing with a TINS unit, we're producing square waves.
Okay.
And square waves are not in nature. In other words, they're not normal. In nature, we have sine waves. If you strike a string on a guitar and you listen to it, it produces a sound. Square wave produces a harsh sound. And a lot of the TINS unit uses, instead of a sinusoidal wave, uses a square wave.
Okay.
And the square wave will produce more bitey sensations when you're playing. So what you can do is some people are going to be really sensitive to that, and other people are going to work better with others. So what you have to do is, like I said, you have to kind of watch them and see, are they really liking it, or are you seeing them like tense up and it's like this is not. So
again, it's
this
back
is not
to
fun.
Like reading the person.
Reading the person is very important.
Okay. So what about something disturbing that you've seen in electricity with play?
People ignoring somebody, thinking that they're really liking it, and they're gagged and bound, and you could tell that they're having a bad day.
Okay.
Or one of the electrodes is not making a good connection, and they're getting burned.
Okay.
And I've seen that way too many times. So it's important when you're working with a TINS unit. Listen up, folks. You want to make sure that you use conductive gel, or that their skin, and you can use a wet washcloth, or so that you can moisten the area a little bit, spray some water. Water works good, as it helps the skin be a better conductor.
What about saliva?
It's liquid.
So yeah,
right? Yep.
It does work too.
Yep.
Okay. So is there anything that you've done that you wouldn't do again?
I've probably not done the things that I shouldn't done.
What do you mean?
Meaning that the things that I know that you shouldn't do, I didn't do.
Okay.
So
you were just strictly safety. Is that what you're saying?
I don't want to have a scene go wrong.
Okay.
Or I don't want to have somebody, as soon as that you did it, and they're really pissed at you because you shocked them way more than they can. And that's the other thing. You got to watch people's tolerances.
Sure.
And if they're not digging it and they can't take it, giving them more isn't going to make it better.
Mm-hmm. It might make it better for the sadist.
Yeah, well, that's what you do.
I know it is. That's exactly what I was
But not
thinking.
going overboard, though, at the same time.
No, because it's back to reading your partner.
Yeah.
And like what you think they can take. And I've never given anyone like burns, but I've received burns because the pain tolerance. Some people have just really strong pain tolerances, or they like that pain. And so it's like, all right, give me more. All right, these are gonna hurt for a few days.
Yep. And you're gonna feel it, and you're gonna be a little red, and that kind of goes with the territory. Generally, a TINS unit won't make you very red, though.
No, it was more the violet
Yes, that's
wand where
correct.
you're using the metal tools.
Yes.
And then whatever design they're drawing on you is what is left on my body. And it's kind of nice because when you think of, regular like corporal punishment, impact play, they get to enjoy those marks for a week. So with a lot of electricity, there's not really marks, but occasionally there is. And then like I get to enjoy those marks for like a few days.
It's
So
kind of
like,
your badge of honor.
Yeah, absolutely. But for myself, not not to like show others, but strictly for myself. It's kind of a cool thing. But then you also wonder, am I damaging my skin? And then that's the other thing.
Well, when you walk out in the sun, you're damaging your skin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Yes, tan. So is there anything left that you haven't done yet, that you haven't explored with electricity, or have you done everything that you've
I've
always
done a lot
wanted
of
to
things
do?
with electricity. Really.
What about in other forms of BDSM? Is there anything that you haven't done, or that you have done that you'd like to do again that is not electricity related?
Sometimes the blue flashing light at Kmart is good to do.
What?
In other words, sometimes from
Just
your point
whatever
of view,
comes?
I think sometimes putting yourself in the dominance in your playpen and let you do what you like is really good. And I think in my situation, when you're topping, that you look for somebody that's a lot of fun to play with, and you can expose them to things that they've never tried. Or generally I think that you have to kind of let somebody know, I'm going to do electrical play on you.
Sure, and then you're just going to be able to do whatever
And then
you want to do.
I'm going to do a bunch of different things.
Sure.
And then I'm going to watch and see how they react to it.
And then you would know where to go from there.
Yep.
But what about other forms of BDSM? How about like impact play, or like needles without electricity, or any kind of fetish stuff? Any of that? Does any of that interest you?
Yeah,
Have you
I'm a
participated?
kinko. I like all that stuff.
Oh, you like all of it.
Yeah.
So, can you go over any of it that you like want to share? Like different things.
Oh, let's see. I guess
Not related to electricity.
Not related to electricity. Well, I guess predicament bondage.
Okay.
That's always
For you to do that to a sub?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And how would you go about doing that?
Ice play sometimes, tying somebody up and putting clamps, so that they're tied on their nipples and pulling. And, if you put an ice cube on the back, guess what's going to happen? They're going to move and they're going to...
And then they're hurting themselves in a different way.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So that's fun. That's fun.
So is it watching their reaction, or like what is exactly about that, and maybe even with electricity too, just in general from the topping perspective?
As a top, when you're you're in a good scene, and you know what, some people are not made for BDSM.
Why do you say that?
There are some people that they're not going to receive it right. I mean, sometimes you meet somebody and they like somebody that's there that doesn't belong there, but sometimes people are just not cut out for some of the stuff that we want to do. Okay. And I'm sure you've seen that, or you see something that you don't like and you go, you have a reaction like, that you would when you see something gross, like, oh God, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you run into people that they're not really scene friendly. In other words, you can... I
haven't really run into that.
I've seen
because they're all of my subs are trying to please me. Mm-hmm. So it's whatever I want to do. I may know what they like. Maybe I'll incorporate it as a reward or whatever the case is if I feel like it. But let's say I'm doing impact play on somebody who has a really high pain tolerance, or someone who can pretend that they do and just like get through it, but I can tell like it's taking its toll on them, but they're not giving me any bodily reactions.
Yes. Here's what, in answer to your question, what I like is the excitement of the hunt and the play.
Okay, so explain that.
Meaning that you're going to have a partner who's going to be all over the place in a fun way. And you really have to tie them up
with
tight.
reactions.
With reactions.
I love that.
And okay. They're moving and trying to get loose and
I love it because I want to make it worse.
Yes.
Is that the same for you? Okay.
Yeah. And when they engage you, when you're doing this and you see that this is really fun. And you know what, as a top, and it's a power exchange, right? They've given you permission for you to dig into this and do what you have to do. Mm-hmm. That's that dynamic of the reaction that you get back from them. That's fun. That's the hunt. That's the hunt part of us. The old hunt and gather stuff that from our ancestors when we were crawling around on the ground. That was the excitement of it. Mm-hmm. And you know what BDSM is? This is natural in nature. Animals, if you look at their thing, there's dominant and submissive players, and
sure.
in that
hierarchy
world.
Of the
and you know what? We're part of that world.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. Absolutely.
We are part of that world. We came from that, and we are that.
Okay.
And so if you find the right people, again, to your question, where they're really fun, and you play for a couple hours, and you have to take a break, and then you go right back to it, and it's like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah,
it's good fun.
I call it chemistry.
Yeah.
There's chemistry there.
Exactly.
So what about people who have either really low pain tolerances, or they can't mentally overcome it, or they just really don't like pain?
Well,
what do you do with those
I've
people?
seen some things at the Spanko parties where somebody, the top, who was not a real good top, goes in at the very first moment and spanks the hell out of some poor girl who didn't have any chance to get used to, in other words, to...
Yeah, I don't like to build. I don't. I'm like, let's see how quick I can get through my toys and then rut them out. Like, I do enjoy that. But that's for my pleasure.
Yeah.
That's not for the person.
Right. But see, sometimes that makes a scene go too quick.
And I'm okay with that because I have an endless supply of partners.
Yeah.
So, like, if I'm at the dungeon, you know how it is for women.
Yep.
If I'm at the dungeon and you have a beautiful girl who's also dominant, they're kind of rare. You get a whole line of them, and it's like, who's next? Who's next? Who's next?
Yep.
I don't know.
But if you're at a party and this is the first time this girl's been spanked, and all of a sudden somebody spanks her super hard, like in the first 10 seconds,
yes,
it's not going to go good. And then it kind of tarnishes that.
Tarnishes what?
It tarnishes her trust in somebody. Like, don't hurt me.
I totally would agree with that.
Yeah.
The people who play with me, like, they may not have seen it. They're warned. But they always don't think it's going to be as bad as it is. And then the women actually do really well with me because their pain tolerances seem to be higher. And some of them, like, get off on it and the whole thing. But, like, yeah, some of these guys are like, oh, I can take this. And then, you know, within 5 hits, they're out. Mm-hmm. They're done. And I'm not even, like, at full force yet.
Yeah.
Because I do enjoy, as you probably do too, putting all your implements out. It's like a ritual thing. Yeah. And I set them in order from least painful to most painful. And then I kind of gauge their body. But my goal is to get through all of my toys till the worst one. But if I can tell, am I only going to get through half? Okay, well then we're going to go straight to the worst toy and it's going to be over, because that's my satisfaction.
But see, if you're the one that, you know, I'm coming to visit you and you burn out the person in the first 5 minutes.
Sure.
And I leave and it's like, what did I do here?
Yeah.
It happened too quick.
Oh no, I totally get that. Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't had any issues with that. I still enjoy myself, and it's like,
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, it's completely fine. So what about, like, finding partners? How easy is it for you to find partners? How do you find partners? I know you said you do online, so you do Collar Space. So that's just like, it's not a dating site, but it's where you're messaging people trying to, like, do play partners. Are you going to events still?
I haven't been to a party in a while.
Yeah, because you're really busy.
Yeah.
How does it affect your personal life?
My personal life at this point is, you know, pretty much just doing TV stuff all the time, commercials.
Sure.
And so.
But you don't share what you do with other people? You keep it pretty private?
I can't really talk about it, you know, and we do some stuff for some churches and stuff. So, you know.
So it's just like-minded people.
Yeah.
That's when you can discuss.
Yeah.
And you're finding those people online?
Well, I've found a few of those people online, but I'm not really, you know, actively searching for them.
So when was the last time you played?
A few months back.
Okay, so not long. And then how did you find that play partner? Or is that a friend? Online.
Okay.
Yep. And it was electricity?
Yep.
Were you the top?
I was.
You were the top.
And I've actually, you know, I've played a couple times with a couple other, you know, people that are friends of mine that are you know, and that's fun too. I like that, you know.
Yeah, people that you've
switching.
already played with.
Yeah.
Oh, switching.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not really doing events. You do the online stuff that works. Collar Space is the best place for you.
It's okay.
Found?
It's, you know, there's a lot of not real people there, as you know. You know,
I don't know that because it's different for women. So I hear a lot of the guys running into fake women or women who just want money or whatever the case is. But I'm not running into that.
Most of the ones that are looking for money are not real. They're not real dominants. There's somebody that's doing a scam.
Okay.
There's a lot of that.
So for me, I get offered money. That's a little different.
Yes.
You know, because it's like the guys who want financial domination.
Mm-hmm.
And then it could be in exchange for something, or it could be nothing. It could be like, I just want you to control my money, or it could be like, hey, let me come clean your house for an hour and a half, and I'm going to pay you $150. I've had that too. So, you know, you'll have those. Okay, so that's
let me see how we can get back on your. You know, I think for me that, you know, the play parties are the most fun, you know, because I can demo this stuff and, you know, a lot of people like to see it. And, you know, when you turn into Mr. Wizard at the play party, I end up with
everybody.
It does.
Absolutely.
And then they go, and people that are freaked out about it, and they'll go, you know, and then they'll see me doing this, and they go, well, wait, doesn't that hurt you? And it's like, well, if if I did it like this and I let it arc there, yeah, it'll hurt a little bit like that. But when I grab a hold of it,
full hold.
yeah.
Okay,
And
that's
so
cool.
it,
So that's the best way.
yeah.
So that would be like the events and stuff.
And so I've helped out with a lot of scenes that, you know, Xena and, you know, a lot of, you know, I've been to the studio a bunch, and people, oh, Nick, make sure you know, bring all your toys. You know, we want to, you know.
Well, do you do consulting work where the dominatrixes can bring you in if somebody wants an electricity
I haven't ever done that,
session?
but I've done it for them at the parties, and, you know, they go, what did you bring tonight? And, you know, they were all like,
yeah.
Show
That's
you
really
know,
cool.
and once it starts, it causes it such a firestorm that people love it, and you know, and of course, you know, when I'm teaching or I'm showing somebody something, it's really fun.
So, how do you feel overall about the BDSM community? Do you feel like they're very accepting? Like what?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, just like any other thing, there's people that are going to be really in tune with what you're going to do, and there's other people that'll freak out if they knew what you were doing.
Okay. But like, no, the people that are already in it, like, it just welcome you with open arms, really interested.
I've never had any issues with somebody not liking, you know, in other words, you know, at the time, because I was active, you know, at the clubs, everybody knew who I was. Now it's been a while, and
then you get new people rolling in,
and they don't know
who
I am.
Sure, absolutely. So, what about misconceptions of BDSM in general? Do you think anything like that? Like for me, a lot of people think it's sexual. So I think that's the hugest misconception, is they think everything is sex. Even like this podcast, I have people that were asking me, oh, so is this porno? No, it's not. It's a podcast, you know? It's talk radio, like we're just talking. And then the little clip of, you know, me doing a mini session, like they think that leads to the porn or whatever the case is.
You know, it's interesting. Those are the people that show up to the party that don't belong there.
Okay, so those are the people that you were talking about earlier.
Yep, and like the club that I was at in Las Vegas, where the swingers were there, and they weren't getting it. You know?
Have you ever gone to a swingers club? I have, and I'm just curious what your experience was.
Well, my only interaction with them, no, to answer your question, no, I've never done that.
Okay.
Never been to one, but I was exposed to it several times at some of the places that I went. And
because they came in.
Yeah, because they came in, and it's like who the hell invited them? You know?
Did you notice that other BDSM people felt the same way? That it was like it's like two separate groups that like shouldn't or don't cross over.
That's how I think it should be, because when they're inappropriate and they don't understand, and they're doing and saying things, and they think that this is all about sex, and it's not.
So for me, it was different because I was the BDSM person going into a swingers party. So I'm like the odd man out. But like with my experience, I was curious to see, you know, what it was about, what kind of people were there, what kind of sense of community was it. And, you know, everybody was pretty respectful. They had a system of bracelets, and you could put on different colored bracelets depending on what you were looking for, girl on girl, open to couples, da-da-da. And then they had, you know, rented rooms upstairs in the hotel where you can go do your business, either voyeur, or you can, you know, whatever, orgies and all different kinds of things, or you can just kind of be by yourself with whoever you've chosen, things like that. But I did not fit in there at all. I was just
see, that's what I'm talking about.
In.
The two don't really mix.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I did not. I don't know. I just felt like I did not belong there. I was not uncomfortable because I don't really get uncomfortable, and I'm not shy, and I don't get nervous. So I enjoyed talking to these people, but these weren't people that like I would want in my circle of friends or my life, because I just felt like there wasn't enough in common. And I totally respect what they do, and I'm completely fine what they do, but I personally didn't want to be a part of it. So, and yes, like as you were saying, they can be too forward. They were definitely really pushy to try to get me to put on those bracelets and to go upstairs, and I did not.
Right. See, what the interesting dynamics, what you were experiencing there was, they don't know. Number one, you walk in, you're a very attractive woman, so that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to see, and it's like, you know, that's hot. That's hot.
And that's the way it was. It was like, and I don't want to sound conceited, but I was the most attractive person there.
Yes.
And so everybody, it was like a swarm. Everybody swarming me, and I'm totally enjoy talking to a lot of different people, so I was fine with that. But I also know motives, you know, too. And there was like one attractive guy there, but he was awkward and strange, and I can just tell his personality. Like, dude, like, yeah, maybe you look good, but like, it's not happening. So he moseyed on up to the rooms to get whatever he could. Never really bothered with me, just kind of stared at me the whole night. But it was just a weird experience. And I ended up they had a dance floor, and I ended up just dancing by myself or with my girlfriend who I brought there. And then people would try to dance on me and do these things. But it is very similar to like a nightclub too. People do that all the time, but it felt like even more sexual because they're very sexual beings. So it was just not my cup of tea.
And that's the same thing that I found out exactly. But you know, they like to watch because they think that it's going to turn into something. Now in the early days of the Leather Rose, there was sex, you know, and I've seen it at some of the clubs. I've seen it.
Well, yeah, I see sex at the BDSM clubs.
Yep.
But it doesn't look like the swinging sex. Like,
no, it's not.
The energy in the air of a swingers party versus let's say a dungeon, it's completely different. With the dungeon, it may just be they're exhibitionists, and they want, you know, people to watch, and they're still going to engage, maybe or maybe not, in the sadomasochism aspects. But it's just very different. Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that I like about going to the club and bringing your toys, and people say, "Show me what you got." Let's and then once I start doing something, then I'm going to have a whole bunch of people that are going to want to come and try this. And by the way, one of the other things I didn't say is that Violet Wand is full of wax. There's a wax core.
Interesting.
And when they get hot, they start to smell a little bit. And if you keep going, it'll break the case, and then the wand is done. Okay. So when you're using this, the reason I go to the parties with 2 or 3 Violet Wands is once, and because it's a super.
And so you can tell.
Yeah, when it's really warm to the touch, and it's almost uncomfortable to hold, then you need to stop.
Sure.
But it's a real killjoy when I'm doing a scene and all of a sudden it's like, nope, I have to stop. My equipment's overheating, and it's like, hey, I didn't get to try it, and then. So then I pull out another Violet Wand and use the next one. Set this on the floor, let it cool off for a little while, then you can use it again.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that.
No, I didn't know that. And again, mine is made more for facials, so it doesn't get. I don't use it that long. That's another thing.
Yeah, see, yours is a lower powered unit, and it's not going to get hot.
And it doesn't. But I never use it for extended periods of time either. Because there's so many different elements that I like to do with BDSM. So that might be either the beginning or the end or whatever it is. But I have this whole scene I'm going to go through, you know. Oh, actually, I usually do beginning and end, because beginning, you know, they don't know what they're getting themselves into. So that kind of puts them into a mind space. And then towards the end, they're beat up. So their skin is extra sensitive, and so then I enjoy that part too. So yeah, that's my thing.
You love to do what you do.
I do. Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any further questions. What about you? Is there anything else you want to discuss that we didn't cover? Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me come in.
Thanks for listening to Bound to Talk. Look for us on YouTube, iTunes, or visit boundtotalk.com.